Welcome to Vegan Ultra. I'm your inspiration guide, Adam Gallus, on this epic quest for health, hope, and happiness, in which I lose 150 pounds in 12 months on a whole food vegan diet while walking 2 marathons each week, every week for an entire year. To prove to myself, my family, and anyone watching on YouTube that anybody can become the ultra version of themselves, the healthiest, happiest version of themselves if they give it a try and are powered by plants. Today is a special edition, 4 tips on how to have a joyous and wonderful vegan family meal with a non-vegan family. Now, let me share with you tip number 1 from a surprise family dinner I just had. It was absolutely wonderful. The first thing is you need to be open and honest with your family that you are vegan, because guess what? They love you, and there are vegan options at almost every meal. So specifically this was a celebration of my grandmother, and my mother brought some Vietnamese food. So for me, she brought, and my uncle, some white rice. You can see here, this was the one of the processed foods, but vegan, nochi, which is made out of potatoes. So I certainly do appreciate the effort. This was, very tasty. But let me share with you some tricks and tips from Dr. Campbell, Dr. Greger, Dr. Barnard, and Cornell University on how to determine whether or not something is whole food or processed. The first thing you might want to look at, according to Dr. Greger, what is the ratio of carbohydrates to fiber? If it's 5 or less, that means there's so much fiber, it's probably a whole food. Here you can see that it's around 30, meaning basically the reason it's white rice is they've stripped out the fiber. Next, you want to look at, according to Dr. Barnard, how much saturated fat is there. A lot of processed foods will be rich in saturated fat, so not much here. That's good. According to Dr. Campbell, 10% or higher protein, with the exception, of course, being a fruit, which tends to be around 5% protein. 10% or more protein tends to also be something that'll avoid the ultra-processed foods. And then according to the World Health Organization and U.S. government, you want the ratio of potassium to sodium to be at least 1, or ideally above 2. So you can see here there was actually no sodium, so that's certainly good. So this is a good option to have. But of course, there are better options such as wild rice or brown rice, although in this case, of course, being a Vietnamese restaurant, their recipe included some eggs, so I wasn't able to have that. Nochi, a delicious potato-based dish. Now you can see that the sodium here is basically the potassium to sodium ratio is around 0.5. So there's basically a high sodium, modest amounts of saturated fat, and basically looking at the protein, it's around 12%. So this is another good option, but still it was somewhat processed. Again, I appreciate the effort my mother put in bringing this food, but now let's get to the unprocessed vegan options. Red pepper is something that I didn't used to like before going vegan. I still am not that much of a fan. I'll put it in my soup, but eating it itself, not necessarily. But it is good, of course, for your microbiome. Remember, 30 or more types of fruits and vegetables per week is optimal for a healthy gut bacteria that will keep you healthy, including your serotonin, so your mood. It'll help you sleep. It'll help your immune system. It's so important. So a variety of fruits and vegetables. Now let's take a look here. You can see sodium to potassium. The ratio of potassium to sodium is 60. How about carbs to fiber? It's basically around 2, so non-processed. And protein, this is around 15% protein. That's right, peppers. And for context, according to Cornell and various studies, 5% protein is the minimum required for healthy humans, 3 times that in peppers. In fact, if you wanted to be a bodybuilder, you could pretty much live on peppers if you wanted. Of course, variety is the spice of life. Remember, the gut microbiome. And my personal favorite for unprocessed vegan foods at this wonderful meal, lima beans. My family, of course, is very enthusiastic about all the things I am teaching them. My father is trying to transition towards a Mediterranean diet. My entire family is eating more beans, more nuts, the science-based magic of which of course I've covered in various videos, and beans were my favorite. Remember what Dr. Dan Buettner says that in the science-based magic of beans video, 1 cup a day, you'll live 4 years longer. Yes, we have in fact confirmed that with the scientific studies. And look at this. This is about 24% protein. The ratio here of carbs to fiber is less than 4, potassium more than sodium. So yes, confirming this is of course a whole food, and you can see it's also rich in iron. So this was my favorite. But now tip number 2, because when your family is eating delicious Vietnamese food or any kind of takeout, you're not necessarily going to be wanting to be eating beans and peppers. So this is where tip number 2 comes in. Microwaved vegan options, such as these are stuff that I bought at Target. Sweet Earth, this costs about $5, and you can see here's about 360 calories. Now you can see it has a modest amount of saturated fat. The sodium to potassium ratio is 0.5, so it fails on that. Overall, good source of protein, but you can see that there is a fair amount. There's some oil here. That's where the saturated fat is from. And you can see a long list of ingredients. This is one of the better options, but when celebrating a family meal, you want to definitely bring the taste, bring the flavor, because of course you're also offering anyone to sample some of these wonderful vegan meals. Next up, I tried this Daring Penne Primavera. Looked delicious. It was delicious, and this is also one of the better options, though it has slightly more saturated fat because it has more oil. So you can see basically the potassium to sodium ratio 0.3, carbs to fiber. That actually does fit because this is rich in whole grain. So again, one of the better options, but still this is processed but delicious. And finally, the fried rice bowl from Daring Chicken. The chicken here is made out of peas, and it does taste like chicken. It's absolutely amazing. Now, mind you, I'm not actually craving chicken, but it is nice from time to time to have some vegan chicken. So you can see here, the potassium actually more than sodium, also rich in fiber. So again, this is one of the better options. This was around, I think, $6.70. So again, this is something you don't want to have very often. But now let's take a look at how those 4 rules of thumb apply to something like soy milk. Organic, unsweetened. This is the one my AI life coach told me meets all the criteria and is considered whole foods based from these various whole food vegan doctors. So you can take a look at first, low in saturated fat. Remember, processed and ultra processed tends to be high in saturated fat. Low in sodium. How about the sodium to potassium to sodium ratio? It's about 4. How about carbs over fiber? 2. And of course, how about the protein ratio? Is it above 10%? It's actually 35%. And you can just look at the ingredients. The 98% filtered water and soybeans with 2% vitamin fortification. And you can see B12, 1 cup, 100% of the B12 you need. It's also rich in calcium, rich in vitamin D, and you can have 3 or even 4 cups of this according to the U.S. government's guidelines to stay safe within the guidelines for soy-based isoflavones. We'll be talking about that in a future video. Now, tip number 3, be flexible. Now, as you know, I plan my meals meticulously because I'm working with a doctor, dietitian, personal trainer, and AI life coach to accomplish something absolutely incredible. So I had to basically replace the Saturday soup basically with this meal, and I went ahead and I put in all this information. And so you can see this is a 2.5 pound meal running just under 700 calories per pound. So that's modestly below the standard American diet of 900 calories per pound. You can see 1,610 calories, 53 grams of fat, 11 grams of saturated fat. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you can actually see the nutrition information here for this wonderful family meal. It was absolutely amazing. And of course, Family is everything to me, and that is why I never miss a family meal. And the point here is we're proving you can have a thriving vegan diet while still spending time with family at meals. 53 grams of fat and 11 grams of saturated fat, 75 grams of protein, 209 carbs, 54 grams of fiber, 38 is the recommendation, sodium around 2,700, and potassium 2232. So a good amount of calcium, rich in iron, potassium to sodium ratio slightly below the World Health Organization's recommendation of 1.0. But the point is that we need to be flexible so that you can enjoy your various meals. And then this brings us to tip number 4, the most important, which is to be a joyful vegan, to embrace life when your family is having a meal. Go there. I know there are some vegans who will not sit at the same table with me, but personally, I believe that it's important to be an ambassador for Blue Zone Veganism. Remember, my family is moving more towards plants, more nuts, healthier diet. That's the point here. Every little bit helps. And the goal is to vegangelize the world. That means you can't hide from the world. You have to be a part of it. You can't just congregate with fellow vegans. You have to try to show other people that there are benefits, that this is science-based magic and nutrition-fueled sorcery, nature's gift to all of us that can help us to be the healthiest, happiest versions of ourselves, the Captain America versions of ourselves, if we just give it a try and are powered by plants. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel and like this video to help other people find it on YouTube. And thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend.